everyone. Jonathan Brandt, Go Out Living. We have a special guest today. We have Daniel Esposito, former NFL player, uh, arthritis, fibromyalgia, still fighting, I would say, but to the extent where you came from four joint replacements
Yeah,
to end up a two-time USA track and field masters national champion, an All-American and world ranked sprinter. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Thank
Welcome.
you.
It is
Thank
such
you.
a pleasure to have you here.
It's great talking to you. We had a little conversation prior too, so it was yeah, it's going to be a good podcast. So,
I agree. I agree.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited.
So I was diagnosed with these things much later, after my football career, and everyone tried to blame it on sports. And I was like, this isn't what's going on. And I kind of wanted to figure it out. But I think it's, kind of go back to the beginning of my life a little bit, kind of how these things progressed. But so my mom was married a couple times, three to be exact. And two of those guys were pretty rough, alcoholic, abusive guys. But I moved around a lot. So I was in 5 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 3 high schools. And so as a very young child, I knew that my fastest way to making friends was through my athletic ability. Right. And so, I'd move, be in a new school. They'd pick teams. I'd always be last to be picked because I'm the new kid. And, and then so I identified with sports greatly, and really movement more so, because I was always stretching. Even as a young child, I was extremely flexible, always fast. And but I had this abuse around me. And it made me question my faith. And so I think, this kind of ties in interestingly, because I'm not like someone who's professing everyone needs to follow some faith, but my own experience, I was previously an atheist in this process. And the two things that I looked at that said there can't be God because these rules in the Bible are so arbitrary is don't eat swine for it's unclean, and don't mix linen and wool. And I was like, well, see, I'm having all this stuff bad happen to me in my life. And then look at these two passages. Okay, obviously there can't be a God because he'd be protecting me. And I'm sure he was in some way, but my faith was rattled, and went through my whole life. And then when I started learning about the body and how it works, and understanding how DNA mutations don't really turn into good things, and in mass populations for us to all end up the way we've ended up with another human next to us that's evolving right alongside of us. Didn't make sense. It couldn't sustain populations. And then you start looking at how the body worked, and you're like, goodness. And then when I found out that when you do eat swine, it causes a process called glycation in the body, which is basically a protein that builds up in your body when a sugar interacts with a fat, or protein. And glycation, visually, you can think about it when you barbecue chicken and you've got the barbecue sauce and the meat. Well, the barbecue sauce has all the sugar in it, and the meat is the protein and the fat, and it creates that glazy protein. So you're allowed so when you eat it, glycation causes advanced glycation end products. And that's basically that protein. You can have about 15,000 of those end products per day. Your body will clean them up naturally. One strip of bacon is double that, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're on like a keto diet, right, you're going to cause this glycation, which is going to cause your muscles to gum together. It's then going to cause inflammation. It's also going to cause oxidative stress. So it becomes this soup of junk that's one of them creates the other, creates the other, creates the other. And it just becomes a cycle that until you stop putting these things in your mouth, whatever it is, bacon, processed foods, whatever, you're always causing little bits of inflammation in the body, or glycation, or some other things like oxidative stress, et cetera. And then, so when you mix linen and wool, the interesting thing is it becomes a dead fabric against your body. So this is organic cotton. It's got a frequency of about 100 megahertz. your body is between 65 if it's not doing well and up to 100 plus in that range when you're vibing high, when your energy is good. Well, if you mix linen and wool, it creates a dead frequency on the fabric. Separately, they're about 5,000 plus megahertz apiece. So when it becomes a dead fabric, what it's doing is it's pulling electrons out of your body, causing oxidative stress and glycation, the thing the pig causes. The other interesting thing is that shirt you're wearing is polyester.
Oh, here we
15
go.
megahertz, right? Way lower than
Oh,
your body's frequency, not zero, but
right.
way lower. But when you wear, something that's higher frequency than your body, whether this organic cotton is right now or not, but linen and wool, definitely, it's adding an electron back, stabilizing those free radicals. Now that process is happening constantly. It's not like you just one or two a day. It's happening to you right now. Right. And so
That's
when you
crazy.
take that shirt off and you put like a linen shirt on, I don't know if you breathe better, right? But
Right.
we're sleeping on these beds that are polyester. Like our entire days are, having these poor fabrics against your body. And that's why linen should be used in hospitals still, because it's going to help with that oxidative stress. And whatever disease state you're in, one of the byproducts of that is more than likely going to be oxidative stress. So you want to manage that, because oxidative stress will cause more inflammation, which will then cause more oxidative stress. And it's like you got to slow all that noise down. But anyway, so getting back to my life, and so I didn't play football till I was a senior in high school. So I walked on to the team up here in Philadelphia, and didn't play much. It wasn't a really hard league. It's not like my body was going through anything at that point. And then when I got to college, I walked on to a small Division II college here in Pennsylvania. And, I was fourth, fifth, sixth string running back my first couple years. You're on the practice squad. And then by my junior year, I really started understanding football. Like I knew where every one of my linemen were going to go on every blocking play. I knew how to influence defenders to overrun gaps and, all that kind of stuff. And so I earned the starting spot my junior year, ahead of the two scholarship guys. But then that was Wednesday or Thursday. I was told I was a starter. Friday night before our first game, our head coach told the offensive coaches that I'm not the starter, that this other guy was going to be the starter because he was a scholarship guy. And so not only was I not second string, there was a younger guy who was also a scholarship guy who was now second string. So I fell with no practices from the starter. And let me tell you, all spring the year before and all summer, my stats were way better than everybody. I had more tools in the toolbox than all these guys. I loved them; they're brothers of mine. But
Right.
we're competing. It's like an F1 driver wanting his seat. So
Exactly.
yeah. And so um, first game goes, and I thought I'm going to get my carries anyway. It's so obvious that I can't be on the bench. First game comes around, I had no carries. I was like, huh. And our running backs didn't do well. And, the offensive coaches, coordinators yelling at the running backs. And I'm like, don't yell at me, bro. It's like it wasn't me. And then the second game comes around. And even though they played so, not poorly, but not well in the first game, I still didn't get any carries my second game. So then finally I'm like, okay, coach, my running back coach was a younger guy. I was like, what's going on here? He goes, just hang in there, Espo. I'm like, no, I'm not hanging in there. I need to know, or I'm walking off, and I'm just not going to play football anymore. I'm not going to sit around, put all this effort in. Like I knew that in the summers, these guys were all down the beach. I was running hills. I'm doing everything I can to be
You're
in
putting
the
the work
NFL.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he goes, all right, all right, all right. And he told me the story about what happened. And I said, okay, well, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to stick. I'm going to be a role player, contribute on special teams, but I'm going to have to find a way. So my senior year comes around. And I mean, I had like maybe 25 carries that year if I was lucky. I would have one carry a game sometimes and have like a 60-yard touchdown and never see the ball. And it was frustrating, not only for me, but for my father. So my senior year, same thing happens. First game, running backs aren't doing anything. Offensive line coaches yelling, or offensive coordinators yelling at everybody. Second game, the running backs aren't doing anything. And then finally at the end of the second half, they put me in. So I ended up having, I think, 136 or 163 yards that first game,
Nice.
mostly all in the second half. Then I was the starter by my third game, and then I had 300 and something yards and offensive player of the nation. That's when the scouts started taking notice. And then I got invited to camp without a contract with the Redskins. They offered me a camping contract, um, signed another running back, guy named Terry Allen, first running back to ever come back from multiple ACL tears, first running. And so, of course, he displaces me. So he's like, no, go retire, bro.
Right.
So they cut me, before before the preseason. And then the first game of the first week of preseason, they called me back and signed me again. Was doing really well, broke my jaw in my first play in the NFL, though. The interesting thing is that the summer my freshman year, heading into my freshman year of college, I was working out with an NFL quarterback who was going into his second year, because the guy who owned my gym, he worked out there, said, hey, can you work out with this guy? I'm like, sure. So I go and I work out with this guy, and 5 or 6 times. And he tells me at the end, hey, you can play in the NFL. Like, you're really good. And so I was like, cool. The first game was against that guy. My first NFL game,
Well,
it
that's
was a guy named
awesome.
Rich Gannon. I don't know if you remember Rich Gannon. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I had a broken jaw in 2 places. I played the entire game and told my coaches, with a minute or two left, that I can't go in anymore. My face was out to here. They released me with an injury settlement. The Saints signed me back the next year. I break my jaw again. They release me, sign me back the first week of the regular season. So I'm there about 4 or 5 weeks of the regular season. But at this point, the shoulder's not healing, right? And I'm like, why am I not healing? And that's year in between those two teams. I had a long time hanging out with my buddies who were DJs. So you can imagine what kind of lifestyle I was in, diet I was eating then, 23 years old, still an NFL player, so to speak, going out to bars and stuff like that with my buddies who were, so it was, yeah, I was definitely not healing or allowing an environment to heal in my body. And I noticed it when I was with the Saints. I wasn't running. I was tiring quicker. My flexibility was shortened just a little bit. My shoulder wasn't healing. I could barely do a push up if I was lucky, but I didn't want to tell anybody because I'm, last guy on the bench, in the NFL, and you want to just push through everything. Anyway, get cut again. And then, it was fine. I was still hard charging. I played some semi-pro ball. The XFL wanted me to come out. I was just kind of, having fun with football. And, but, I was tightening up. I was slowly and slowly getting tighter. And I was like, gosh, I guess this is just old age. And it's not. It was a reflection off of how I was treating my body, not only physically, but mostly through food, what I was putting in my body or what I wasn't putting in my body to support a healing environment. And so eventually what happened, I used to be in banking. I used to work for Washington Mutual. I was a wholesale rep for them, and, Washington Mutual, and the mortgage crisis hit. And I went from making a whole bunch of money to making no money. And I was like, I got to find a way to make similar type of money. So I started an energy brokerage. And when I started this energy brokerage, it was just me in my kitchen, basically, type of deal, and knew nothing about energy, had to learn it real quick. Food was probably 3 times a week. I was getting Domino's buy one, get one free pizza. And I'd eat that both pizzas
Yep.
from lunchtime till the time I went to bed. I would tear through 2 pizzas, not really realizing what damage I was starting to do to my body. I would feel something happen internally. I'm like, ooh, what's that feeling? Turns out it was the inflammation cascade, and so I would ignore it, though, because I'm an Iron Man and I think I can fight through everything. But eventually my lymphatic system stopped working really, well. I was filling up with lymph, just filling up with lymph. And that's a direct correlation to inflammation. Your white blood cells give off lymph. After it destroys the invader, it gives the waste away, and then your lymphatic system will carry it out. If you're under constant inflammation, you're constantly having white blood cells repair areas, and you're constantly puffy. So my face was like a pumpkin. My body, I had no cuts. You couldn't see any muscles. I was still big, but and my brain fog was insane. I was sweating all the time, losing hair. eventually was 265 pounds, up from about 210 to, I played football at 215.
How old were you
And
at this point?
how old was I?
Yeah, at this point.
It was in my, just about the time I turned 40,
Okay.
40, 41, in that range. I'm 53 now. So then I decided, like the guest I talked to, Edna, learned about the Gerson therapy. Gerson Miracle was a documentary, and it was talking about juicing. And I'd never heard of juicing. I'd never heard of superfoods. I didn't really know what they were. And so I was like intrigued by it. So then there was another documentary, I think Forks Over Knives, and then Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, all talking about the benefits of juicing. So I was like, okay, let's go. And so I just started juicing tons of spinach, beets, Swiss chard, fruits, whatever I could throw in there. I was like doing it. And it turns out that's not good for you. One, you've got no fiber to upregulate the glucose, right? You're going to be having these sugar spikes all the time. But also in certain plants, spinach, Swiss chard, and beets, especially, there's a little molecule called oxalic acid that creates kidney stones. But if it leaks out through your gut, which is what happens in mass when you're juicing certain vegetables, then you start creating kidney stones all throughout your body. Big reason for women having to get hysterectomies. They drive inflammation, autism, cancer. Also, they turn your cells into a bone producing cell. So your normal cell should be functioning, doing a job. Well, it's now turned it into a bone producing cell. And so now you're constantly laying out collagen, bony type material. And I was just getting stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And plus, these oxalates tear your muscles apart internally. And they get onto your bone because they're looking for calcium. So they sit on your bone, and now they just tear the muscle above the bone like all the time. And it was terrible. Like, I mean, I can't even explain how much pain I was in constantly. Like, my entire body felt like it was on fire. It's like I was skinning my knee all the time, but inside. Right. And so I had a son on the way, right? I'm 53. My son is 8 now. His mom is 20 years younger than me. So I was at the gym. I had the diagnoses of degenerative arthritis, fibromyalgia, the 4 joint replacements, officially 1 prescribed on paper, but Rothman was like, we're going to have to do all your joints eventually. And then we want you to start them at 50. And that's when you need to start these things. I was, 43, 42, whatever at the time. And then my son was born in 2017. So about 3 months before he was born, I was in the gym, and I was just like, I just said, knowing that I would not be a good father. And I was trying, but was not a great father to my first son, he's almost 15. I'd have these mental health outbursts, that I would try to control through thinking, but then something would trigger me. And it's just like this response, because I'm in fight or flight constantly. So everything feels like I'm being attacked on a just physiological level. So I was like, I'm going to fix this. And for a year, I was just trying to stretch everything apart. I was like, if I just break my muscles apart and they'll kind of, I'll stretch them out, and I would go nowhere. And it's because the inflammation creates a fibrin, and the fibrin's like a bungee cord. So you kind of stretches out, and then tightens you back up in a couple days, right? And so I felt like I was getting somewhere. But then every time you have inflammation, you have a collagen response in the area, and you need 4 amino acids and 4 cofactors. The cofactors are vitamin C, copper, zinc, and manganese. I know that copper and vitamin C don't store, right? So you need to pretty much have them every day, because your collagen requires these for proper synthesis. So it's going to create your collagen, which surrounds every single muscle fiber in your body, as more like a rubber glue, but slimier, rather than Elmer's glue, right? So when you don't have the cofactors, it just becomes weak and unstable and like glue. So, and you've got all this going on in my body, and it's causing oxidative, stress as well, which is killing the cells, your muscle cells, other cells. And so I'm atrophying my muscles at the same time. So I very luckily was at a networking event. My knees were swollen, 2 softballs on each knee. had all the puffiness, and a friend came up to me and says, "Dan, what's going on?" And I was on my knees, da 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 da. And so I'd been stretching, been foam rolling, no interventional, no catalysts yet, right? I didn't even know about any of this stuff. And so I am like, all right, she's telling me I really need to do this. And I'm gonna, for the first time in my life, take someone else's advice. Right. So I grew up like a wolf. I mean, part of my life I was in a trailer park. I was the epitome of Florida man for a while.
Right.
And so, it just, everything was me figuring things out. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. And so I go home, I get the castor oil, you get it from CVS or any drugstore, heated it up a little bit to thin it out, and just rubbed about a shot glass worth on my lymph nodes, my knees. Went to bed. The next morning I woke up, the swelling in my knees was completely gone. Right. And then I started blowing stuff out of my face for 3 days. So everything that I was dealing with in sort of puffiness just shrank down to my normal self. I was like, holy cow. So then a few weeks later, or a few months later, I went to a Phillies game and had a beer or two with my friends. I'm not a big drinker, but I felt really bad after having those couple beers. And I was like, maybe I'm acidic. And it was just a thought that was placed in my mind. I don't know. And so I'm like, all right, well, maybe I need to change my water, because all the water I was drinking was purified, and all purified water is acidic, means it's got no mineral content in it. So it's not really making you healthy. It's actually making you the opposite of healthy by drinking that type of water, purified water. So I got really good water, and I don't know if it's a placebo effect or not, but I drank it and my head fog cleared up. So then I started looking into water. What is hydration? And I came across Dr. Mercola and Dr. Zach Bush, and they had a podcast on proper hydration. And so they were talking about hydration at the cellular level, pulling water into the cell, making the cell function properly. And I started thinking, if I make my cells healthy, then will I make everything else healthy? And that's how I started out. So I started looking at other ways to make my cells healthy, and near range infrared light therapy was one of them. And it was like pretty much one of the next one or two things in his podcast series. So I started doing near range infrared light. And so I would go to a location, do it for half hour or whatever the time was. I'd walk away, and then I'd hear, it'd be like a glass tube break, click, and then I'd feel relief in my muscle. I was like, ooh, what happened? Right now I'm intrigued. Like something happened, right? First time at all that I felt any type of relief instead of progressing worse. So kept going, trying to find research or Googling at this point. AI makes things so much easier, but I'm Googling why does red light therapy and, all these things. But what it's really doing is the near range infrared frequency of light penetrates deeper into the skin, and the photons can affect the chemical bonds of the things that are binding us together. Right. So it's weakening that bond. And as I'm moving, it popped, right? It allowed it to crack. It's like, cool. So figured that out. One of the next things was fasting. And so I was doing some intermittent fasting and wasn't getting any kind of relief. And then the same friend who told me about the castor oil, she says, why don't you try a 3-day fast? This guy did it. That's all you got to say is this other guy did it. And I'm
Right.
like, let's go. Right. So I do a 3-day fast. And at day 2, in about 24 hours or so, I'm feeling click, 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 click. I'm like, ooh, what's that? Right. So researching that. And it took me a while to figure these things out. But what's happening there is that you're releasing en masse enzymes out of your liver that normally are digesting food, but now they're starved and they're looking for other proteins in your body. And they're usually looking for the misfolded protein aggregates of fibrosis, fibrin, and collagen, cleaving their chemical bond, thus making the body be able to use these mechanoreceptors and other resources to then, it's like sanding it off. It's not taking an axe to it, because the body has to remove these things in a measured way to not overwhelm blood flow and, other processes. So now the chemical bonds of collagen, this is why your chiropractor has a tough time doing things on their own without a catalyst. They're 7 times stronger than steel. right? So they are very hard, if impossible, to mechanically break through on their own. You need a catalyst. The fibrin bonds, while they're not as strong, they are pliable. It's like a plastic water bottle that's cheap. You squeeze it, you hear it cracking, it's not breaking, right? It's literally it's a viscoelastic polymer is what they call the makeup of a fibrin. And they become so thickened in connection with one another, they're blocking blood flow from getting back into those soft tissues to deliver the nutrients and the enzymes and the things you like to to restore homeostasis. So then in this series, I would sleep with my kid next to his bed when he would go to sleep at night, and I'd lay on the bed on the floor. He'd be in his crib, and I'd listen to a podcast. And the next one in the series was on oxalic acid, and that's the plant defense chemicals we talked about before. I
Yep.
almost skipped over it because I thought it wasn't going to be relevant to me. And now keep in mind, at this point, I had realized that dry needling is helpful as well. You know, because I had I told you I do acupuncture to myself. Well, the genesis of that is I used a vitamin B shot on myself, put it into my butt. First time I ever did any type of injection of anything. And I hit a really, really tough piece of muscle. And that tough piece of muscle is fibrosis and collagen buildup. That's mainly what it is, probably some oxidative stress. The needle shook like crazy. I was like, oh my God, I broke something. Like I messed something up. It immediately took the pressure off of my sciatica. And I was like, that was dealing with that for 8 years. And I was like, oh my gosh. Right. So then I started going to an acupuncturist, doing the dry needling. But it's expensive. It's like $80, $90 a session. So I eventually, and I don't recommend anyone to do this unless you get your acupuncturist to train you, I started doing it to myself. Right. And so I now have this unique perspective of what is actually happening in the body, what's causing these releases. But I would come across these oxalates on my bone and in my soft tissue, and it was so painful. I didn't know what they were. I had already done the juicing and stuff, so they were overloaded in my system. When I listened to this podcast on oxalic acid, I was like, oh my gosh, that is what I'm coming across. And there's a simple cleanse with basically high dose lemonade and some binders that pull them out of your system through your pores. On my Instagram, I've got a picture where you see it's literally when it came out, it was like a pumice stone come out of my chest. It took about 2 weeks for it to pass. It felt like a razor blade
That's
in there.
crazy.
And when I finally squeezed it out, I was like, oh my gosh, it literally looked like a pumice stone. Hard, and they're harder than diamonds. They call them diamond dust. But the typical reaction that I get when I was doing it is just a bunch of sand on my shoulders and in my chest and in my stomach and legs. They would just start coming out in like little bits. That was the first time something big came out. And so that gave me tremendous amount of relief. And then it just became me falling forward, asking the right questions. What does this create? Okay, how are those things held together? What chemical bonds are holding that junk together? Well, what is a catalyst to that chemical bond? Naturally, right? Supplementation. And then you find out that there's all these studies that are out there that I don't want to say prove out my method, but support, the things that I recommend in my method that are helping the body get into a faster healing state. And so while it's not a cure for a disease, it's like, here are the main events that are happening in our body that are causing stiffness, autoimmune challenges, and pain. Here's how you degrade or help the body degrade these major, events that are happening. And here's the scientific research behind it. Right. And
And
it's
it's
the
really
same.
it's supporting the healing
Yeah.
of
Because
that for like you said, it doesn't totally heal it, but it's
well,
helping to
healing is only done by you,
right.
right? Only you can. No pharmaceutical heals anything. You can ask AI, do pharmaceuticals heal any disease? And it's not like a lengthy answer. It's just no, right? So your body loses resources over time or gets overwhelmed by certain conditions in the body that it can't catch up. And if we keep doing the same diet, I'm going to give you folic acid as an example, because while it doesn't really well, it does contribute to chronic pain in certain ways, but it's really more causing ADD, anxiety, and depression in people. So folic acid is a substitute for folate, and it's really not an efficient substitute for folate. And what it's supposed to do is limit the amount of histamine that your mast cells give off, right? That puts you into fight or flight. So if we send a child to school in the morning with a Flintstone chewable, he's a third of the way to the upper limit of folic acid. Now, while folic acid is not a neurotoxin, at the upper limits, it acts like one, right? So what folic acid is doing when you eat it, it's sitting on a folate receptor. So if you're eating, a bunch of energy bars or whatever that have the folic acid and salad, it doesn't matter. That receptor is already occupied by folic acid. And so it's not going to convert. You're going to be anxious, right? But now you send your kid to school and he has a school lunch loaded with folic acid, has a snack, chips, whatever, folic acid, seed oils, etc. Then he comes home, has a snack, folic acid. Then he has a bowl of spaghetti. He's well into the upper limit at this point. Now that folic acid doesn't metabolize for a couple days. You send your kid to school the next day the same way. Now your kid's got a diagnosis of ADD, right? But that histamine response is also causing little bits of inflammation, which is also causing little bits of collagen, which is then causing oxidative stress. And it becomes this soup of a mess that if we're not just taking our scope of what we're exposing ourselves to and just narrowing it down, we're eventually going to drive ourselves into autoimmune conditions, pain, loss of flexibility, mental health problems, things like that. And so what I've created is really a playbook. I've curated it, right? It's not like I've invented any of this information. It's all out there in multiple studies. And so it allows people to, one, know the enemy. Because if you don't know the enemy, you can't defeat the enemy. Know the enemy's weakness, because if you don't know the enemy's weakness, you can't defeat the enemy. And then here's the scientific research behind it, but also, things like hugging a tree, right? Sounds silly, especially to men, if we grew up in the 80s, and that's 70s, whatever, and that's hokey. But then you find out there's tons of research and science behind the way the electrons come out of the Earth's surface and stabilize your free radicals, increase blood flow, being connected to nature, has a lot of benefits, and healing is one of them. It can promote faster healing. So then I add the science behind that. And then, okay, well, nose breathing. We all know we should breathe through our nose. I probably haven't breathed through my nose once this entire podcast so far. And it's a problem for me, but it creates anxiety. But it also, when you breathe through your nose, you're taking L-arginine, which is an amino acid you're going to get from your turkey, your meats, chicken, whatever. I think pumpkin seeds might have it. Converts it into nitric oxide, right? Not nitric oxide prevents those chemical bonds of the fibrin to form, right? So they can be more easily broken apart. So if I eat a slice of pizza and I don't breathe through my nose, well, that fibrin, that inflammation is going to happen. If you eat pizza, you're going to have inflammation. So if you're breathing through your nose, you're degrading the fibrin's chemical bond. I'm not breathing through my nose. And if we're exactly the same person, we're twins, and we just change one thing, I'm going to get sick faster than you would get sick from eating pizza. I mean, long-term sickness,
Right.
like chronic sickness. So, and so, knowing the science behind that, and then knowing, how to apply it, you just become more intentional, and you have a set of tools and a guidebook. Once again, it's not a cure, right? You are the cure. Your decisions are the cure. It's just a set of, strategies, supplements, foods that allow you to be intentional.
Why are we doing it so wrong?
I said before, it's the toad in the pot, right? I mean, we ate pizza in the 80s and it didn't affect us that much. We had salad in the 80s and it wasn't sprayed as much with glyphosate. And, we were drinking water in the 80s and it wasn't filled with plastics and hormones. And, it's just hidden. And we're told, I think intentionally, it's populations are easier to control when they're sick, depressed. And, I mean, if you look and see that it's all around us and there's tons of evidence saying that we shouldn't do these things, the funny thing is when you find that evidence or you ask AI, it's always the same thing, but more research is needed. No, no, no. This research is enough for me. You've shown it. This guy's shown it. And this guy, we know it's happening in our body. And so, yeah, it's just all around us. And until you start making better choices and really taking ownership and accountability, and that's a hard thing for people to do, is like they don't want to admit they've done it to themselves. They want to think they've got a rare condition. They want to be part of a diagnosis tribe. I've got ankylosing spondylitis, or I'm a you know knee replacement survivor, and that becomes their personality. And it's because doctors scare people into taking this medicine, taking this surgery, and that pushes them down a path. I don't see many people healing from anything from the modern medical industry. I mean, my mom died this summer, after a surgery, and then went in about a week later, and she was just destroyed after that surgery.
We sit there, we might get a quick fix, or we think we did, and
Yeah,
then it really falls apart. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
it's
Like,
it,
I
it,
mean,
it
all my treatments, okay, I'm alive, but I was not doing good a year ago, like I told you, and yeah, I went from one issue to the next,
yeah,
and that's why I think we're here, is trying to find those answers. But,
yeah.
like you
There's an
said,
interest.
if you come out with it, you're looked at as a quack almost. I mean, we can go to COVID, and when people are saying, "Don't do this and this," and look at,
Yeah,
they were just destroyed in the media, you know?
yeah. It's that amount of vitriol toward people who have an intention to help and they have no profit always tells you that something's going on. And once again, people can think I'm wacky. I don't care. I'm Paul Revere here. I need people to know the chemtrail issue that we have where they're spraying us above our heads constantly. One of my challenges is I was dealing with some depression, weird thinking. I wasn't able to see my computer, and I'm like, what is going on here? And some days it was bad, some days it was good. So I'd have the same thought and I'd be depressive in a hole, same thought the next day, and it wouldn't impact me so much. So I'm like, I know it's not my thought. You know what I mean? It's something else is happening. And so I had just, my father told me about chemtrails and I thought he was a whack job. But once COVID started, all I was looking for was sunshine. So I was looking up all the time. And my family's been in the military, pilots, the whole thing. I know how engines are supposed to work, and it's like pretty obvious that they don't do what is happening to the skies on their own. And tasted my tongue and I was like, that tastes metallic. So with the NFL alumni, I get free LabCorp testing. So I went to LabCorp, got my blood tested. Both my mercury and my aluminum were super high into the red. And for aluminum, the only place I would have been exposed to it was my deodorant, right? The only place mercury would be fish, but I wasn't eating fish at the time, right? So I was like, well, where did all this come from? And I'm in the sauna all the time and I'm way up here. Did a cleanse 3 days later, it all cleared up, right? Just, I could see again. I was more productive and crazy thoughts went away. And so even like, unintentionally, we're poisoning ourselves. We're getting poisoned. So it's hard to dodge. And unless you're proactive in countering it, not just avoiding it, because sometimes you can't avoid it. Um, Eventually, I think you're going to get sick.
Well, like you said, it's everywhere. It's in our water, it's in our food, it's
Who would have
literally
thought it's in our
everywhere.
clothes and in our bed?
Yeah, it
The
is.
fabrics we're laying on.
It
Yeah,
is. It is. I came from Nebraska, moved, but we're having a huge, I wanna say, I don't wanna say outbreak, but cancer is running rampant right now, and it's starting to they're not gonna give us the real answer, I don't believe, but people are
yeah,
really questioning our water, or their water down there, and it's all from what farmers are using for fertilizer.
yeah.
It's leaking all into the water, which makes
Sure.
sense. It's all basic stuff. It's all common sense.
I'm such a psycho about my water. I almost feel crazy, but I won't. Hardly drink. I may have a reverse osmosis system, and I'm still afraid of my tap water. I still filter it in an extra filter, but other than that, it's like all bottled water in glass jars. I mean, plastic jar, plastic water bottles. You're going to get millions, if not billions, of microplastics, all creating inflammation. And yeah, it's a shame, like, just even our most basic need, which is water, is, bastardized through, and it's, once again, I think it's fairly intentional. And even with glyphosate, I mean, the reason the way that glyphosate works is it explodes the bug's stomach. Now we're eating that,
That has to be good
yeah,
for you.
and then preservatives, all the preservatives in food, they're killing bacteria. Well, where is it going? First stop is in your gut with all the bacteria. So you're destroying your gut bacteria by eating foods that have preservatives in it. Obviously a little bit isn't going to kill you. I'm not at the top of the mountain and I never will be. I'm walking up there and I'm probably going to, about three-quarters of the way is where I've decided to pitch my tent. I'm still going to have a little bit of pizza, still going to have some chicken wings and stuff every once in a while. But in my home, like, my son asked me, Dad, why don't we have snacks here? I'm like, because we got to go get a snack if we want a snack. Like, you really want a snack? We got to make an effort for it. Um, and then, but yeah, but my kids have really good eating habits now, and I'm developing them very young, and they hear me talk about this stuff. And when I first started, everybody thought I was crazy. It was just looking at me like, what are you talking about? But kind of feel like I was about a year or two ahead of where a lot of people are wakening up to. But it's an interesting, talk about the Bible and stuff. There's this concept called ages, right? And we're right now in the age of Pisces, which is the fish, right? And that's, I think, why the Pope wears a fish head on his hat. And it's supposed to be an age where you follow authority, you follow your priests, you follow. Going into the age of Aquarius is where it's an enlightenment period. And it's like, that feels like that's happening right now. Like, I see so many more people having this enlightenment, and where you sort of take control of your own spirituality. I have a very cosmic belief of spirituality and energy based. And, it's not the traditional way that people look at religion. It's more of a sort of a Gnostic's view of, energy and light, and because everything around us is energy. The ether, everything's made up of plasma. 99% of the universe is plasma. And I think that's consciousness. We have plasma in our blood. We have a little pineal gland that I think is our antenna. And if we open ourselves up to the plasma, I believe that's where the Akashic records are stored. You get information. And so when I opened myself up to this, is that I'm going to heal this. I'm going to heal myself. I think I opened myself up to, the universe helping me along the way. I mean, just the way that questions came to me out of the blue, and I would research it, and it would be like a direct answer to something that I had been, that I should have been curious about. So
Did it take you getting sick or getting arthritis to really wake you up?
it took healing to wake me up. It took, like, I think the most impactful thing, other than don't mix linen and wool and don't eat swine. I mean, that was like a direct thing. Even when I was a child, I think first or second grade, I remember vividly, I can see the waiting room, the treatment room, a doctor asking me, do you breathe through your mouth or do you breathe through your nose? And I was like, why does that even matter? Breath's coming in. You know what I mean? And so, for whatever reason, that one moment in time, I couldn't tell you what happened the 4 years surrounding that event, one moment, but that stuck with me. Another was with my energy brokerage. We qualified for a broker's retreat with Shell Energy, and we went up to the Ozarks for a big golf thing with a bunch of other brokers. And now I thought that all of this stuff was only happening because of collagen and oxalates. I wasn't tuned in to what the inflammation cycle was yet, which is a healing cycle, by the way, not attacking you cycle. So we're there. Everyone got food poisoning, right? And I was like, wonder why, and myself included. And so I tried to backtrack. I wonder what made everyone sick. And the first thing I landed on was pineapple. And I was like, first, I had to qualify for this thing. Second, I had to even be in the energy business to have this trip. Third, they had to serve pineapple. Four, everyone had to get sick. And then I had to question it. Well, I'm like, something, the Akash, whatever, the ether, something said to me, pineapple contains bromelain. And I was like, what is that? I don't even, where'd that thought come from? And so I'm like, what is bromelain? Bromelain is used as a commercial meat tenderizer to get rid of fibrosis in farm animals. I had a tear come out of my eye. I was like, oh my God, like what? Like, and I immediately I bought pineapple powder. You can get it in a supplement form. I had been, I don't know if you can see, but these are some spice racks here.
Yep.
All my supplements, I kind of microdose things, but I was, just adding things and taking things out and trying to figure out what would work. So I would just drink the pineapple powder and then click, click, click. It's got the enzymes that you're similar to the ones that come out of your liver that are looking for the fibrosis, and it's cleaving the chemical bond. But a couple weeks later, I had a giant piece of plaque come out of my mouth. And this was toward the end of COVID. So I missed 2 dentist appointments, right? And I have got no cavities, but my father has false teeth, right? And I was like, oh no, is this the beginning of the end for my teeth? And my partner, she was like, "No, that's plaque." I was like, "Oh God, gross!" And thank God she's an esthetician. She likes popping pimples and gross stuff because I would have had to have gotten rid of her if I saw that come out of her mouth. But yeah, so I went to the dentist and I was like, "Hey, I got this going on," and they're like, "Well, we're gonna have to do a deep cleaning. It's gonna cost $1,000."
Wow.
And I was like, it's like 3 days before Christmas, and I'm a dad. I didn't even start my Christmas shopping. So, like, I don't wanna spend $1,000 right now. And so, but I got this fear, and that's what doctors do. They put this fear in you and, like, "Make the decision now. Teeth are gonna fall out." And I'm like, "Ah." And then I'm like, all right, fine. So she sends the tech in, and I've got this feeling because I'm such an advocate for finding, researching this stuff before you take doctor's advice. And I'm like feeling like a fraud. And I said, when the tech came, I said, hold on. Oh, and I asked the dentist, I said, isn't there something you can spray on my teeth to loosen it up and I can come back in a week? Nope, there's nothing. But I vividly remember getting a cleanse before, and a prior dentist had done something like that. That's why I asked the question.
Right.
So then I started thinking, wait a minute, let me Google enzymes, NIH, dental plaque. The whole page was filled with studies, and I was like, okay, just give me the regular cleaning, $100 it cost me. And, so it just, you really gotta, it's hard because you got to know the questions to ask, but you got to advocate for your own health. You can't make decisions in a doctor's chair. It's not going to help you out. It's either going to drain your wallet or drain your energy.
What I keep coming back to is don't be in a hurry. You have an issue, whatever, but you don't have to solve it that minute, that hour. Take your time. If something
Yeah.
doesn't sound right, like you said, question it and go find the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem is most people don't know how to look or what question to ask. So, with AI though, it's great. So I was on Reddit the other day and I'm trying to give someone advice, free. I'm not trying, when I go on social media, like the Facebook pages or the Reddit pages, I'm in there free. Like, I'm not saying, hey, I got a supplement to sell. I got a program to sell. It's like, hey, I'm giving my program away for free on Sunday. If anyone wants to attend, I'm going to go through it. Because I know a lot of people in the chronic pain, autoimmune community don't have access to a lot of disposable income. A lot of them don't work. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to make this available to everybody. The only catch is you got to listen to me give it. But then I opened up for questions and answers. So anyway, it's using AI and taking like this. How would this group of supplements? I told this girl to do it because she thought my what'd she call it? My some kind of juice. I don't know what she called it, but some pejorative about my really great supplement. And I was like, just take all my ingredients, put them in AI, and ask AI how these ingredients may support any chronic pain conditions that you're going through, what their mechanisms of action are, right? Check me. I'm confident in what I've created. I've done 10 years of research and lost over 12 years of my life to chronic pain and autoimmune challenges. And, but no, it's just like a lot of people don't want to research. They just want to live in their misery. And it's a long life. I was looking at myself in my 40s. I'm like, I got 40 more years of this. I've been dealing with it for, at the time, it was like, maybe 4 or 5 years. I was like, I can't. Like, I will not make it. If it wasn't for my first kid keeping me around, I probably would have, made different decisions. Who knows? But, chronic pain community has a much, much higher unaliving rate than the normal population, because a lot of physical pain, but also the mental health
Yeah.
challenges. Chronic pain changes your brain structure, like literally changes your brain structure, puts you into fight or flight. And so, like I mentioned before, when you're in fight or flight, whatever emotional trigger you might have, even if it's not an a known emotional trigger, just any loud noise, instead of your trigger being way over here, it just comes right here, because you have to be in survival mode when you're in fight or flight. It's your basic instinct to stay alive. And so it's a reaction and not a response. And so when I would feel that way and I'd be driving, when I'm in that place, because I'm yelling at everybody driving. I'm like, oh, there I am again. There's that Dr. or Mr. Hyde, and I would try to talk myself down out of it. So I'm like, I'm strong willed. I can, mind over matter. And that's just not the case. If there's too much matter in there, then the mind's not able to control it. And so, yeah, it's unfortunately, I had to go back in life and do a lot of like, hey, sorry, I was sick. I know I was kind of a jerk, but I didn't know I was being a jerk. I thought I was being normal, because when your brain is telling you things, that's your brain telling you things.
Yeah.
So it's like you're right, and it's hard to say, I need to take a step back and get a hold of these things.
Let's make this the last question.
Okay.
If you're somebody out there that is going through chronic pain, disease, just not doing well, we mentioned just doing questions. What truly can they do? What is the first step that they need to do in their life to change it?
Remove omega-6s, I think, is the first start, because you really want to start at the cell, right? That's where inflammation starts. And if you're not responding well there, it's the rest of the stuff is hard to manage. If you're responding well at the cell wall or the cell membrane, the junk is going to be way less, right? So that means getting rid of your manufactured foods as much as you can. Not eating French fries, things that are dipped in those seed oils, cooking oils, and then adding back as much omega-3 as is safe, to start rebuilding that cell wall closer to that 1-to-1 ratio. It can take a year, it could take 6 months, but it slowly starts happening. And I can answer, like, so the essential fats was one of the groups of nutrients I didn't know about. I didn't think it had much to do with chronic pain, but I was like, let me just go down this rabbit hole. This was only about a couple months ago I really learned about this. And so I had started using um, cod liver oil, and I, get my salmon delivered from Alaska, one of those box companies. And I noticed a change in my neuroinflammation, right? Because I can tell that these cells are not responding as intensely as they were in the past. I can tell in my voice, like even my
Right.
like,
Right.
or it's just kind of, chill type
Yeah.
of thing. And so it's pretty apparent, you know, it's working for
It's
me.
wonderful when you feel great after doing something, you know?
Yeah, I just got done a 4-day fast and I felt like a superstar after that.
Right.
Yeah.
I do have one more question just because you brought up omega-3s. Am I doing the right thing doing sardines? Because I actually really like them, and I'm trying to get away from
I think
a
they're one of the
supplement,
highest,
but I really
actually.
like it.
Yeah, I like sardines too. I have a lot of little fish, and they hold
Okay.
less heavy metals,
Yeah.
the smaller fish.
Yep.
But I'm pretty, and I just done this the other day because I do these AI conversations with my kids in the car so they can hear this stuff and where it's not coming from me because they don't listen
They
to
don't
me.
listen.
I mean, they do a little bit. My little one does more than my older
Oh,
one.
yeah.
But yeah. So I think sardines are one of the highest in omega threes. Yeah.
And like
So
you
you're
said,
good there.
from what I understand, like mine are coming from like the North Sea.
Yeah.
So it's not coming from where all the metals are that
Do you know where? How's the Pacific Ocean in terms of? Because I get mine from Wild, Alaska.
yeah, I think that's
So
fine. That's
yeah,
yeah. I
you
honestly, I
can
think
tell
a
the
lot of the
quality is
sardine
so much
wherever the
better.
sardines are coming from are usually better than like tuna, for instance.
Yeah, yeah. But I love tuna, man.
I do
That's
too, but
one of my vices where like I know I'm eating heavy metals right now, but I
yeah.
love tuna so
But
much.
I just
So,
tried
but I
macros.
know the heavy metal cleanse though,
Yep.
so that I can counterbalance that because I'll put into my supplement some zeolite, which is a really great heavy metal binder. Or, I've got a bunch of other tools up there, so you can still indulge in those types of things as long as you know how to counteract it and stay committed to it.
So, okay, sorry, one more question. Where can people get pretty much like everything you went through today is on from that cellular level on up to the foods to eat. Where do we
hmm
find that? Where is there a book? Is there a podcast? Is where's the best place for somebody to say, okay, one resource, I'm gonna go here.
So if you're looking for something where you can take it in your own hands and like educate yourself before you go spend a lot of money on like a holistic doctor or a naturopath, because I think they're going to be your best professional help, right? But if you want to learn about these things and start figuring out like what I've created, which is called the chronic pain playbook, right? Kind of might change that a little bit, but once again, I do it for free. I'm going to do it for free at least once a month. And on my linkedin.bio/undo method, which is UNDU, you can get links to, my website, the playbook, and where I'm going to host the webinars. Just come join me for a free webinar. I'm not going to try to sell some fancy system at the end. I'm not holding anything back like, oh, but there's this one trick. If you sign up for my course, I tell you everything. Right. And then so you can then go buy it on, the platform where it's hosted. It's $196. You get a free bottle of flexibility fuel with it. If I would have had this information 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this. It would have progressed so much faster. Or for $13.96, 69 cents a month, you can have it. And within a month, you could screenshot every one of the pages. I don't care. Like just, or come to the free one. Right. And then, yeah, so undu.me is my website, or just an easier place to go is linkedin.bio/undo method. And I've got a community. It's kind of like a Facebook community. You sign up there for free, and it's got a bunch of free resources. One of them is called the World's Greatest Shopping List. I took the 4 essential categories of food, um, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fats. And on a spreadsheet, I've given you where the most bioavailable forms of these nutrients and stuff are, down to, the highest but least bioavailable forms of things like plants. Because, like if you eat an ounce of liver, you're going to need like, for a similar amount of, something that's in liver, you're going to need like 30 cups of spinach, right? So you start really seeing like I'm deficient in almost everything that's essential when you look at this chart, and it's free. And then you can connect with other people who are going through similar things. It's a place to be positive, not accept your diagnoses, and a place to, for biohackers, people that want to hack their health and get healthier.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
and as everybody knows, I always put everything on the blog as well. That will coincide with the podcast. So I will put all Danielle's information on there, so you guys can not worry about writing it down right now. We'll get there. Like I said, with the blogs. I mean, it was great. We're doing this again, by the
Awesome.
way.
Awesome.
We're
yeah.
definitely doing this again. I
Yeah,
really
and
enjoyed it.
if you sign up on that platform, I'll just gift you over the program if
That'd
you
be
want
awesome.
to just start looking at it. I'm actually up redoing it. There's going to be a newer version coming in a couple weeks. I just got to go through all the editing. of it, but it's pretty easy to digest. It's a series of videos over some spreadsheets, and my video talking about what each thing is and laying some context around it. It's pretty easy to digest. A
Awesome.
little science to it, but you go back and listen to it a few times, use the AI as a learning tool, and it becomes like the way your children. Eventually you just, these diseases are all got the same personalities as your kids. This one's this way and this one's this way,
But
and
they're
you
all
work around it.
interconnected, aren't they?
They're all interconnected for the most part. I mean, it's a cycle. It's literally a soup that is, one's causing the next, is causing the next, and it just goes in a cycle until you need to stop whatever's causing the inflammation. It could be food, Lyme's disease, a car accident, slip and fall, whatever it is, something's causing the inflammation. It's not doing it on its own. And then here's how you can help the body to remove these end products, the junk that these conditions are leaving behind.
Right. Perfect. Love it. All right, Dan
Is that right?
Esposito. No, I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Like I said, it was a pleasure to have you on.
It's my
We're
pleasure to share the story.
Yeah, we're gonna have you on again for sure. Uh,
Let's do it.
all right, everybody. As you know, as we leave, find the attitude, keep the attitude, go out living. Bye, everybody.